Welcome. In this explainer, we're going to dive into one of the Bible's most powerful, unifying, and maybe even overlooked ideas. It's a single concept that, when you see it, ties the entire story together, from the very first page to the absolute last. So let's just start with this pretty wild question. What if the whole thing, we're talking creation, the fall, the law, Jesus, and even our faith today, what if it can all be understood through this one idea of a divine breath? A breath that was given, then lost, and then finally restored. Okay, to get our heads around this, we have to know one key term. In the original Hebrew, the word is ruach. In Greek, it's pneuma. And what's so amazing is that both of these words have a triple meaning. They mean wind, they mean breath, and they mean spirit. It's this incredible word that connects the physical world we can feel to the spiritual reality of God. And honestly, this one word is the key to unlocking the entire story. All right, let's jump right in. We're going to start at the very beginning and look at the story of creation as a story of breath. You know, when you go back to Genesis, you say that the creation of humanity, it wasn't some far-off, impersonal event. The way it's described is incredibly personal. It's intimate. It's kind of like an artist leaning in close and literally breathing life into their masterpiece. This verse right here, it is absolutely crucial. It sets up this foundational idea for everything that follows, that true life, eternal life, isn't just about having a pulse. No, it's about fellowship with God, being animated by His very own breath, His ruach, His spirit. That was the original design. But you know how stories go? This incredible, life-giving connection, it doesn't last. It gets fractured. The breath is lost. So the real tragedy of the fall wasn't just about breaking a rule or eating a piece of fruit. The true consequence was a deep spiritual separation. Humanity is exiled from God's presence, and access to the tree of life, which was a symbol of that constant spirit-filled fellowship, is totally blocked. They lost the very thing that sustained them, the indwelling, life-giving breath of God. And this left all of humanity in this state of what you could call spiritual breathlessness. I mean, yeah, people were still biologically alive, but they were cut off from the source of true life. They were longing for something they had lost. The whole world was, in a very real way, holding its breath. So that brings us to the Old Testament. And you gotta wonder, if humanity was breathless, what was the point of all the laws, the rituals, the ceremonies? Was it all just a complicated way to try and earn that breath back? Well, not quite. Think of the law like a divine diagnostic tool. It was never meant to be the cure. Its job was to shine a brilliant light on the problem. It showed God's perfect standard, and by doing that, it proved that humanity, on its own, just couldn't sustain that perfect fellowship. It exposed the true depth of our breathlessness. And this is where it gets really cool. The yearly festivals, they acted like these prophetic rehearsals. They weren't just about looking back at the past. They were pointing forward to a future restoration. So Passover pointed to redemption. Tabernacles pointed to the day God would live with us again. And then there was Pentecost, and this is a big one for our story, which pointed to a future day when God's empowering breath would be poured out. And all of this, all these laws and festivals and prophecies, they were all leading somewhere. They were leading us to the pivotal turning point of the entire story, the moment the world had been waiting for. You see, the whole Old Testament masterfully builds this incredible tension. It leaves us with this massive question. After all these centuries of separation, of spiritual breathlessness, how could true life, that intimate, face-to-face fellowship with God, how could it ever be restored? And the answer, of course, is a person. It's Jesus. And wow, does this moment just perfectly illustrate the climax. After his resurrection, Jesus is there with his disciples, and he does something so deliberate, so powerful. He breathes on them. Now you have to catch this. This is a direct, unmistakable echo of God breathing into Adam in Genesis. It is literally the moment of new creation. So here's the crucial takeaway. Jesus isn't just another teacher who came to give us a better set of rules. His life, his death, his resurrection, it all works to tear down the barrier that sin created. And that allows God's own breath, his spirit, to once again come and live inside humanity, restoring the very life that was lost way back in Eden. Okay, so let's bring this home to the final act. What does all this mean for us? How does this idea of breath change the way we live out our faith today? Well, this whole concept gives us a really powerful lens to look through. It helps us see the difference between what you might call breathless religion, where it's all about performance, just trying harder, following programs, and a truly spirit-empowered faith, which is all about authentic relationship and real transformation. One looks good on the outside, but it's empty. It's missing the breath. Even a practice as common as baptism suddenly takes on this deeper meaning. It's not just about getting wet, right? The water is a symbol of being cleansed from that old, breathless life. And the act itself, it's a picture of being immersed into a totally new life, one that's animated and empowered by the very breath of God. And that brings us to one last big question. A question for you to really think about. This entire story, from start to finish, challenges us to ask ourselves, is my own faith more like a checklist of rules I'm trying to follow, a kind of breathless religion? Or is it a dynamic, moment-by-moment reality of living and walking in a relationship that's sustained by the very breath of God?